Zoom recording. So it's about 8:35 on the 23rd of June. And tonight we are having another one of our Middle East and Israel Film Club discussions. Thanks to all of you who are joining us, especially those with cameras. Lori, I think you have this very beautiful library behind you in your background, which I miss. And Maeve, welcome. It's good to see you all. There it is.
Oh.
Counting. I made her turn on the camera. Oh, this is the performance area. This is the theater. Which theater is this?
This is in Britain. It's in, oh gee, it'll come to me in 30 seconds. I mean, it's up in Britain, middle up here.
Well, my background is some films that I showed during the course of my term this past spring. Okay, what I'd like to do at first is I'd like to spend a few moments discussing my list for the rest of the weeks that we'll meet together and see what you're interested in, and so that I can hi Art, so that I can prioritize what I want to do. Okay, so most of this is in alphabetical order. Most of them are Israeli films. I put in a few films that are not Israeli, but they are Middle Eastern. My student Frank very much wants us to see Autonomies. It has Shuli Rand, who was in the Haush Pizin, and he plays the rabbi of Karelitz. And it has Dana Ivgi, one of, I think, the most important, at this point, no longer young actresses. When Heroes Fly stars Michael Aloni, and it's now on Netflix, which is nice. This is a story in which a group of guys from the army see the girlfriend or the wife of one of the people. Michael Aloni played in Shtisel, in case that means anything to anyone. We will do Fauda, and I was asked to select 3 episodes, somewhat arbitrarily. I figured 1, 2, and 3 of season 3. I had a student who reviewed House on Shalush Street, which is from 1973. And I think we should do 1 or 2, I'll call them classics. Destiny is on my list here as a classic. That's an Egyptian film by Yusuf Shaheen about Ibn Rushd, about Averroes. I am quite interested in seeing Incitement. It was a pick by some of you. That's the year leading up to Rabin's assassination. This coming November, that will be, believe it or not, for us old fogies, 25 years ago.
Wow.
You know?
Incitement? No.
Yeah, I mean, you can do the math, but, you know, that's what it is. And this is from the point of view of the far-right people. Have any of you seen The Kindergarten Teacher?
Schwarzenegger?
The Kindergarten Teacher, Haganenet.
No.
You showed them both last
Right.
time you had the class?
Yes, and I saw
That is right.
on Canopy. Mimi, I know you enjoyed one of the scenes there. I won't give away what. Avi Nesher has a film that I have not seen called Matchmaker. That was on one of my lists. Hannah Laszlo and Yoram Gaon are in the Netflix series Mossad 101. That doesn't mean that we should see it. Mossad, Carol and I talked about this ages ago when it was first reviewed. It's a comedy film about the Mossad, but I couldn't find it. Sandstorm is about Bedouin gender issues, really. And it was shot by, oh, geez, I can't remember her name. But it's all in Arabic, but it's an Israeli film. And it's set in the Negev with Bedouin, mostly Bedouin women negotiating modernity. I have never shown Turn Left at the End of the World to my class.
I like that one.
It's a nice and important film. I've never somehow or other shown Syrian Bride to my classes. Again, a very important film. This is about a Druzy woman who crosses the border from the Golan into Syria. I showed my students a Lebanese film called The Insult, which is now free on Canopy. Another classic film that I have never seen, but it's important. And a lot of the people who came to this did not come from the university, they came from the Hebrew Chorale list. Halakha is also important for the music. Gidi Gov is one of the stars, and it's about basically a military performance troupe set in 1968. Some people mentioned Women's Balcony, which is now available free on Canopy, is a library service. If your public library has it, it's free, and I think you can get it even without a library. Some
That
people,
was in the Jewish Film Festival this year.
yeah, it was a good film. And Waltz with Bashir is another film that people mentioned. Thebe is a Jordanian film set in Wadi Rum 100 years ago in the time of Lawrence of Arabia. Does anybody have any thoughts about any of these?
Yes, the When Heroes Fly,
Yeah,
I thought for myself it was too violent, so I stopped watching it in the middle.
okay. So put down no.
What is Autonomies? He said Frank really wants to hear it. What's it about?
Envisions, of course, Frank hasn't shown up the past time or two, but Autonomies actually is an important and interesting idea. It works out the notion that the modern state of Israel is split up into Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, and in this case, the religious state and the secular state. And Shuli Rand is the rabbi of Karelitz, who is the, you might say, the Rava Rashi of the religious community. And I don't remember who plays the head of the secular state, but it looks at the breaking apart of the Israeli state into two different, it's a dystopian TV series types of things. And from the reviews, I haven't seen it either. And the only way I'll see it is Amazon Prime says it's free with something called Topic, which you can get for free for 7 days. I don't want to get one more subscription to Amazon Prime that's going to cost me another $5 a month forever. So I would try to make sure to see the entire series. I think it has one season or maybe two.
I had to pay for tonight's movie.
What?
Did y'all have to pay for tonight's movie? I had
Yes.
to.
Oh, yeah. No, last night when I went to watch it, it was free on Amazon Prime.
You
I had
got
to pay for it.
free?
I got it for free on Prime, but it was, I don't know if it was like a special or whatever, but yeah, last night it didn't cost.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody
Well,
have,
no, I've seen a bunch of these. I'd love to see Incitement.
okay, I would too. So I'm going to put that one as a yes. Let me find my marker.
And I want to see Waltz with Bashir.
Oh, that's good. That's a wonderful film.
Waltz
I
with
saw that one. I'd love to talk about it.
Okay.
Few of us have already.
Somebody said something? Anybody else have any comments about any of these?
Someone had said something about the Waltz of Bashir or something like that.
Waltz with Bashir.
Do people who saw it already want to talk about it? And people, Waltz with Bashir is set in the Lebanon War of 1982.
Seth, you did that, 4 or 5 years ago in your film
I
class.
did it in my class, that's right.
It's a graphic. It's like a graphic novel.
The graphic novel, and I read the novel afterwards.
Oh,
Any other views that people have?
What about Kindergarten Teacher?
Has anybody seen it, and does anybody want to talk about it?
I've seen two, but the American and the Israeli version. I think that they would both be great to see again.
I will talk about the American version, but we would see the Israeli version.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Has no one here seen The Kindergarten Teacher?
No?
Okay, well, that's actually a pretty important
Let's
film.
do it.
Okay. Is anybody interested in the Bedouin film or in left?
The sandstorm?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to put down yes with that. And I'll make up the schedule, I hope, tonight. One of the reasons that I have the house on Shalush Street is for some of us having Ladino spoken is important. The folks living on Rehov Shalush this is today a somewhat rundown area, halfway, actually parts of it are not run down at all, halfway between Jaffa and Old Tel Aviv, the part where the Independence Hall is and the Migdal Shalom. And the family is a Ladino-speaking family from Alexandria. And I know several of the people who participated every week are interested in Sephardic studies. So that was why I put this as a possibility. It's a
Yeah, I'd like to see if it has Ladino, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much. I have never seen this film. I saw a clip and I said, it's interesting enough. I didn't turn it off after watching 15 minutes. It also is a Globus Golan, and the music is by Dov Seltzer, and the singers are classic singers, and Gila Almagor is the star, and Shaika Ophir is in it. You know, this is a very real Israeli classic. What do you guys?
I'd like to see it.
Let's do that.
That sounds
Yeah, I
good.
would. Yeah, I would.
Okay, we have more than enough things for which I put a yes, and we will now, I'm going to save this. Save. And we'll start talking about Harmonia. So, anybody want to start us off? Rebecca, you are our orchestral expert. Other than the fact that nobody played the cello. I mean, they had violin, they had a couple of different brass instruments, guitar. Rebecca, what did you think?
I was actually quite intrigued by the film, by like the excerpts of music that they chose to use, or I guess showcase, like specifically Swan Lake, how this, like the theme was so recurrent. I don't know. I find myself pondering about it. I finished it. I watched it in 2 parts. I finished it last night. I'm kind of going, because I've actually played the Swan Lake music and the cello solo and everything, and I'm kind of frustrated because I'm going, what was the director's purpose of putting that theme so much in it? Because that theme for a musician, it means a lot of things, and actually it's kind of dark. There's nothing good about it. So I think it's interesting, the choice of that theme being so prevalent in the movie. That's one thing I was really intrigued about.
Anybody else want to talk about Swan Lake or Sherazada or any of the others?
I was sort of, I'm going to go look in my computer and answer your question, because I remember reading something. I showed it to a public showing, and I remember learning about why he used Rimsky-Korsakov. But what I was amazed about was that she played her own harp.
Yes.
Is she really good?
It's beautiful.
Like, how could she just learn how to do that? She learned how to do this. Are harps that easy?
No.
I was like, how can that be?
What I couldn't get over is that she was the woman from Srugim. I kept trying to identify the mom, Sarah, and that she was the woman from Srugim. But I compared Abraham to Shtizzle in that to Abraham, music and his point of view as far as wanting a son to play the piano was very much like Shtizzle, and how important his Jewish ritual beliefs were.
Anybody else have anything they want to say about the music or responding to any of this conversation?
I wanted to just say with Rivka, she mentioned that the music was maybe more like in the lines of dark, just kind of representing more of the darkness. I was kind of surprised that Sarah mentioned that her husband, something to the effect was bad luck, or do you all remember that?
I remember he wrote that piece of music for the baby, and she wadded it up and threw it across the room, and saying it was bad luck. I didn't understand why.
Because it was
Yeah.
music that was not.
The baby hadn't been born yet, I think, so
hadn't
she
been
didn't.
born
It
yet.
was
You
years
don't do that.
prior.
Yeah, you don't do that.
Oh.
He'd had so
Okay.
many miscarriages.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity.
So I'll hop in with a dissenting view. I didn't really enjoy the movie that much. The music was lovely. The visuals were pretty interesting, but I could not lock into any of the characters until the last scene when the two boys are actually smiling at each other for the first time in the movie. It seemed like a whole bunch of the action and the significant interplay, like the decision to have Ishmael to impregnate Hagar, that was all off screen. And all we got was long visions of people's faces saying absolutely nothing and looking meaningfully at each other. And that just didn't do it for me, I'm afraid.
I think it was on purpose because so much of the Bible doesn't give what people think. It's just very cryptic, and so they're trying to replicate that.
Yeah, I could understand the idea of the film, and it was very interesting to retell, you know, that story in a modern milieu with Philharmonic behind and stuff like that. So I could appreciate that, but it was a bit of a slog to get through just because at the end I really didn't care about any of the characters.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wondered why the father of the woman who bore the child, why the father told his daughter, don't do this again, as if she had done it before sometime. Did y'all get that? They were meeting in the bar and the father said, don't do this.
Something about being Israeli?
Yeah, that's when I heard that, Israeli.
Well, I thought it had to do with either her sexuality or that she carried someone else's child also.
She also talked, Hagar talked very briefly about having been picked on as a kid and, you know, what's your story? I think was something like that. And I was really hoping we'd learn a little bit about her, but it never manifested.
No. Can I go back to the music? I found this review that mentions it. It says, it doesn't talk about it as Swan Lake, but Scheherazade.
Right.
And it says, apparently the filmmaker has done another film. In 2001, he directed a documentary about Clarice Sarvash, the very first harpist in the Israel Philharmonic Orchestra. And in 2010, he did something on Zubin Mehta, his use of Rimsky-Korsakov's symphonic suite to carry the theme of Arab identity subtly throughout the entire film. Because Scheherazade is also a rather loose adaptation of its source material, 1001 Nights.
Right.
So,
The Scheherazade was the name of the heroine in 1001 Arabian Nights, right?
She's the storyteller.
The one who
And
kept herself alive by telling a story every night.
very powerful woman in that, you know, she showed that the woman who knows what she's doing can survive the stupid king, who had ideas about I don't know that this is relevant to the filmmaker, and it seemed to me that it may simply have been not exactly, you know, what he had available, but what he had available in his own mental bag of tricks. But Scheherazade is a lady telling the story. And when the violin, when the first violin plays that theme over and over again, That's, as it were, Sherazada in putting herself into the narrative in the 1001 Nights. The framework story is that the two kings are brothers, and the king goes out to visit his brother long distance, and he forgets something. He goes back and he sees his chief wife and all the slaves cavorting in the garden, and decides that all women are terrible. And the vizier that tries to tell him, this is the framework story. The vizier tries to convince him not to kill all the women or not to kill all his wives. And his daughter says, I know how to do this, let me handle it. So she gets to be the wife, and she tells him a story and stops in the middle every night. And he can't wait to hear the rest of the story, so she has her life spared every night. That's the framework story of Sherazade. I have no idea whether gender issues play a role in or the framework story plays a role really in the film. The framework story that's important in the film, that's obvious, is the biblical narrative and how he's reinterpreting. And the notes that were on the film, I think at the beginning and at the end, as well as the screenshots of biblical texts, tell you that this, whatever else this is, it is an attempt to tell a modern story, but to have it based on a reframing of the biblical narrative. So, I take from it, Vayelchu shnehem yachdav, the two of them walked together. In the end, the two that walked together
Boys did, yeah.
are either the two brothers or the two ladies. And that's not at all how the biblical narrative says the two of them walk together. The biblical narrative in chapter 22 in Genesis has Vayelchu shnehem yachdav twice. For some of us, the obvious reference, I say this every year on Rosh Hashanah, on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, it's part of the Torah reading. But that's Abraham and Isaac leaving behind, according to the Midrash, leaving Ishmael behind, leaving Eliezer behind. And that's when the two of them walk together. So again, it's a reinterpretation, and a very interesting reinterpretation for a kind of viewpoint of the two cultures going together.
But don't you think the way the Arab culture is portrayed, it's so wild and animalistic. I mean, that is how the Bible puts it, that Ishmael was sort of wild. Is it Ishmael? Yeah, but I don't know. It sort of bothered me in this film because Hagar wasn't like that. I mean, I guess she actually didn't formally study, and she sort of made the impression that she did. She was breaking rules, but she was so sedate. She didn't speak out.
She was unusually quiet. That was her main characteristic from the beginning. So the wildness of the Arabs, are you thinking of the nightclub scene at the end?
Part of it.
I was surprised by her passion. She showed, just a lot of passion and also empathy with Sarah during the time of the miscarriage.
So regarding the biblical interpretation of Abraham attempting to sacrifice Isaac, his son, what was that in the movie?
That was the competition. Again, you make up the movie is out. You all get to decide yourself what you think. I might be totally wrong, but I think the competition was the binding of Isaac. If the filmmaker said, let's look at Genesis and we do something. And in the biblical story, as Jews understand it, Isaac passes the test. In Islam, it's even more explicit. The Quran has Ismail say explicitly what Isaac only says in the Midrash. But in I'm not going to say any Jewish reading because I don't know whether the Israeli filmmaker is aware of the midrashic idea, but Isaac passes the test. He says, whatever God wants, you know, I'm all in. And Abraham passes the test also. This is a very difficult passage. You know, a lot of people today are thinking, did Abraham pass the test? Abraham was about to sacrifice his son and doesn't complain at all. And he
I think Abraham did sacrifice his son in the movie. He sacrificed his older son who wouldn't learn the piano or the violin, whatever he wanted him to learn.
And he sort of sacrificed his younger son also, who went off to play the piece, but to play it in kind of musical opposite of the symphonic orchestra. By the way, I wanted to say something about the names. We talked about him as being Ishmael, but he was called Ismail in Arabic. What did they call him in Hebrew?
Ben.
Ben. Anybody know what Ben means in Hebrew?
Son.
No.
Son. Now, it is an Israeli common name. People are called Ben all the time. But I think the fact is that they didn't use his name Ismail, whatever that is, and gave him a very generic name, son. I also think has to be something that we can pay attention to.
It's good.
Carol, Maeve, do you have anything to say? I see you're listed here. Have you anything to add?
I found it really interesting at the beginning of the film that Hagar really didn't speak much, and she didn't really speak much until she found and met her son a little bit later in the film. And I thought that was kind of an progression for her character.
Okay.
I have another meaning for Scheherazade.
Okay.
And because as you described that she kept telling the story but didn't finish it. And Sarah in this movie kept losing babies. And the marriage was never over, but she just kept trying.
Okay. The fun thing about film is that we can speculate as much as
That's true. Goes with the eyes too. The eyes. It started out with drawing a picture of the eyes for her to practice with,
yeah.
and then in the middle of the program, and him watching her, and then at the end, he was watching only the young lady and not his wife until she was waiting for her cue. She wasn't getting it. It was again the eyes.
That's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah, you remember Abraham said that everybody, I think that was his first thing that he said to Hagar was something about all my players have 4 eyes.
Yes.
2 for me and 2 for whatever else.
right.
One for the other players, one for the music.
Yeah, 6 eyes.
Okay.
Did folks think it was a successful movie?
I think it was
Vicky.
either like successful or not successful, depending on the person watching it.
I'd say to the person watching it.
I think it was kind of trite to have the biblical narrative posted every few minutes. I think it could have been a good movie without that.
I had a little bit of a hard time with jumping around a little bit with that second pregnancy, the second son that was born. It was like,
They get old fast.
yeah, she had 8 miscarriages, lost a couple of babies, stillborns or whatever. And then all of a sudden there's this live birth. But I loved the part where they were chasing each other down the stairs and he was after her and said, what do you mean, talk to me, talk to me?
Right.
It was this image of a triangle. And I thought that was really powerful, the stairway, and they're chasing each other and it's a triangle. And it was, you know, I just thought that was really neat. The part of the movie that moved me the most was the last scene between the two brothers.
Yeah.
I agree.
So, for whatever that's worth.
They played well together. The
Mhm.
music was chosen perfectly.
And I think that there's something going on about that theme too, about no matter what you think intellectually is going to be okay, that sometimes, your nature supersedes that. So the fact that Hagar had the son, and I mean that she was the mother of this son.
Yeah.
It never gelled for her. I mean, she was never the mother. And yet his biological mother was really attached. There really was the connection. And I just thought that there was a message there too about how sometimes you can't force, what's natural or what's nature for us as parents or any other way. And I thought that the father, I mean, he was kind of weak to me. It was kind of like, well, I don't know. And we never saw them having sex. So we don't know if he even had fun with that one. But, it was kind of like, he was just kind of passive. He was, well, yeah, I want to be a dad. And so if that's the only way I can be a dad, great. But there was never any real connection with him other than wanting his son to study the violin, which wasn't going to happen anyway. So there were some missteps in there as far as I was concerned.
The biblical, those are all in the biblical story. Abraham is very passive.
Yeah.
He's like a Nebush, and what do I do? My wives don't get along. And God said, just listen to Sarah. He's just, he screws up all over the place. So you have a biblical story with this weakness, and then you see the character development. They were pretty true to that.
Okay.
They're pretty true to that. He's top dog, Abraham, and the head of the Philharmonic, but didn't wear the pants in the family, and also didn't seem to have what I would call character, integrity about Hagar.
Mm-hmm.
Or about his kids.
Or his child, right. I think the sacrifice in the film is the way that Itzhak is made into this, or whatever they call him. He's made into this little nebbish guy, like, oh, he's got to play the violin. He's very rigid. He's shaped into this kid that just does everything right. That's the sacrifice in this film, right? Don't you think?
The younger one, the younger son.
Oh, welcome, Frank.
Thank you.
But then he doesn't allow himself to be sacrificed at the end because he doesn't want his brother to be sacrificed when he sees the pictures.
Jody, open yourself.
Yeah, what he does is heroic.
Yeah.
Toward his brother, yes. I think that's really nice. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that the main emotional heat was between Sarah and Ben, Ishmael. And I guess that could be true to the biblical text. Sarah was certainly threatened by the older child that she thought would usurp her own child. But in this movie, they made it a real mother, rebellious son kind of a tension going on.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed a lot of good conflict between wanting to be a loving mother, which she felt, and also being completely exasperated with his kids. She felt that too.
Yeah.
All of us as parents have been also exasperated by, on the one hand, being a loving parent and also having
never.
Right.
There's also the exasperation of like when she's trying to teach him the Bach, right, on the piano. It's like you can't change the tempo like that. Any purist would say, no, what are you doing? So it's like there's more than just parenting involved in the movie too, which I thought was
There's control issues.
Yeah, although you can well imagine a smart-ass young kid wanting to play the piece in whatever tempo he wants. Yeah, I certainly, back when I played the piano at that age, if I practiced and knew the piece, I would sometimes play it at breakneck speed just because I could or something like that. Lynn, yeah, Vicky.
That was kind of like interesting to me too, because I thought I had this flash about, well, he's really more like his real mother, because she was talking about she had been let go of one of the orchestras because she wasn't following directions and all of that. And so I saw a little connection about, oh boy, there's that little plant, that little seed that says, he's got his mother's temperament. He's a little bit of a rebel, and he's not going to do it the way that, the rhythm and the sequence is supposed to happen. He's going to be his own person, just like she was. So that was a little seed there that was planted for me.
Okay. Art and Ruth or Linda, you haven't had much to say. Do you want to say anything for us tonight?
I haven't seen the film yet, so
Oh,
I'm just previewing it first.
Okay, well, you'll let us know next time whether you enjoyed it.
Okay.
Okay, I was able to unmute. I'm here to listen because I also was not willing to pay to rent the movie, but I watched a trailer and it intrigued me enough to come and listen to what you all thought about it. So thanks for letting me join.
Okay, you might be lucky. Minnie said that she found a free copy on Amazon.
Carol just said on the chat that the sympathetic father figure in the film is the father of Hagar.
Oh, Ali Suleiman, very important Israeli Arab actor. Did any of you see The Attack? Phenomenal film. The Attack is a film by a Lebanese filmmaker. Minnie, I think you have seen The Attack and you saw The Insult. Both, and Lori, The Insult was part of our course. You may or may not have watched it. And you have to unmute if you want to talk.
I don't remember seeing The Attack.
Well, one of the previous years I showed it in my class.
Okay, maybe Lori saw it back then.
Maybe. But The Attack was done by a Lebanese filmmaker who came to Israel, shot the film in Tel Aviv. It was the wife of the Arab doctor became a terrorist and blew up a kid's party in Tel Aviv. It's a phenomenal film. Ali Suleiman has had a number of very, very important roles. This was a bit role for him. Yeah. I actually thought, though, when viewing the film, that in the class I had at the university, I have some students who, if I had said nothing, would not have seen the film in the Arab-Israeli background, whereas I think any Israeli would have seen it as being Arab and Israeli. The father of Hagar, whose name I can't remember from the film, I only remember the actor's name. He speaks in Arabic. Hagar speaks very little in Arabic. But if you see the subtitles and you don't know Arabic or Hebrew, you wouldn't know the difference.
Yeah.
And I don't think my students would have picked up like the oud that the Ali Suleiman character was playing. So I wonder if we can speak for just a moment about whether the film is trying to say something about Arabs and Israelis, or Jewish and Arab residents living in Israel, and whether you think the film says it effectively or not.
What do you think? You're always asking us questions. Is that your role?
Yes.
It's my role.
Oh, okay.
I did not want to set this up as me giving straight lectures.
Yeah, I understand that.
I thought it would be a lot more fun for all of us to have a discussion. And we all learn from the discussion.
Yeah.
So Claudia, you get to tell me your humble opinion.
Well, I forgot the question already, but to me, it was, did not see the Arab-Israeli conflict in there as much. I was watching more about the story of Abraham and Isaac.
Well, I did. I recognized it, and I was watching this. It's been an interesting subject of mine to understand what is going on in Israel as far as that goes. And so I paid a lot of attention to that.
Yeah. Claudia, I think you are confirming what I said about my students. As I said, I have some
Thank you
students,
so much.
well, I said I had some students who would not see this at all in the framework. I may or may not be right about any Israeli seeing this as, you know, Ishmael is Arab, and Yitzhak as the Jews, and, you know, they're in that.
Well, I didn't
wait a minute.
realize that Hagar was Arab until, I think until the scene with her father, and they were having sweets and a tea and all that stuff. So I did wonder, perhaps, she didn't seem very Israeli in affect. Most Israelis I've met are pretty outgoing and, you know, loquacious. Maybe she's got a more Arab affect, perhaps? Quiet and demure.
I don't think of Arabs, that's just me, and that's Black Lives Matter here, but I don't see Arabs as being quiet and demure either.
Even Arab women?
I don't know enough.
No, I don't either.
The thing is, since I knew it's about Sarah, Abraham, and Hagar, that is the very origin story about children of Abraham with the same father, and they go different directions. There's Ishmael, and he's the father of the Arabs, and it actually says, isn't that what it actually says, Seth? He is the father of the Arabs.
He's father of the Arabs.
The Arabs.
Yeah, that's in the Hebrew, in the actual Bible. And then
I'll say that
Isaac,
he's the ancestor of a lot of people, and Jews call the Arabs Yishmaelim. So, you know.
right. But so this is the origin story of the split. The thing is, in the Bible, it's not such a horrible split. I mean,
According to whom?
Hagar is sent off. Abraham is reluctant to send her off, but he has to listen to Sarah. He gives her water. An angel rescues her, and she can keep her son alive and brings him to it, marries an Egyptian woman or whatever. Now, when Abraham dies, Isaac and Ishmael are together. They bury Abraham. So the biblical story is actually, these two are brothers. And I think that's what the film is trying to show. They are brothers. They're different moms, but they're brothers. And so that reconciliation can occur, but not in the older generation. It's the younger generation. And it's interesting. It occurs through their art.
Yeah, I think Ishmael was the only one who could really calm little baby Isaac with his music and his trumpet, you know, that just dismayed the parents so much, but the little boy loved it.
Until he started blowing in his ears, yeah.
Yeah. So you can imagine the little guy looking up to his older brother a lot.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Seth, you may know about this. If some one of the Muslim faith were to look at this, would this be an accurate interpretation of Ismail from a Quran perspective?
One of the things that I saw discussed in the reviews of the film was that this is totally an Israeli enterprise. And it's not like they had Arab advisors telling people exactly, you know, putting in their 2 cents. So the Quran, up to about the 4th Islamic century, so up to around the year, I'll say the year 1000, Muslims could read the Quran and say that it talks about Abraham sacrificing the son who was to be sacrificed, the beloved son, without ever naming him. And commentaries in up to the 900s could say, some people say this is Isaac, and some people say this is Ismail, and here are the views one way or the other in the arguments. After around the year 1000, everybody in the Islamic world agrees that it was Ishmael who was the one who was to be sacrificed. The Quran never specifies it. There are arguments that one can make in both directions. If that's what your question is, that's my answer. Today, no Muslim would ever say, well, it was probably Isaac. But for the first couple centuries, Muslim writers would accept the possibility that it was one or the other.
Well, I guess I'm thinking if a Muslim Arab looked at this film, would they see Ishmael as kind of a heroic progenitor? I think they could, actually. He kind of broke away, made his own path, and was successful, and he wasn't a negative character, really.
The one question they might have is that Abraham, the father of Ismail, seems so very Israeli and so very Western in all sorts of ways. So they might not have seen that as being an accurate portrayal.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I get the sense that in the Quran, all these people are perfect.
Yeah.
You know, we have a tradition of, Moses loses his temper and Abraham is too passive and Jacob is a real screw up. But we're used to that, but Muslims know Muhammad is perfect. Those people are perfect, right? Am I wrong about that? They like looking at heroes who are real heroes.
We have this notion. I read an interesting book by Yoram Hazony, an interesting person, founder of Shalem College, and wrote a very interesting political science interpretation of the Bible. And his argument was that this was a political science tract of the late, at least the version that we have today, of late First Temple to early Second Temple times, trying to say that everything that was wrong with their leaders. So every leader has some sort of problem. And again, that was his argument. And he's a religious guy. It's not like he was rejecting religion. I think it's a fascinating idea, but it's very true. Every hero in the Bible, as far as Jews are concerned, has a complicated character with all sorts of problems. Muslims believe that prophets have isma. They are incapable of error. So you just simply would not have this discourse at all. Like our Christian friends, the New Testament does not have, Jesus's character is not complicated by things like sin and missing the mark in the New Testament. Whereas Moses, Abraham, David, all of the heroes have issues.
Beth, this is Ruth. I wanted to ask you and Jody a question. What do you mean by we?
Yeah, well, it's something that we should not do in the academic world, but, although I'm using my academic Zoom, this is sort of an informal club. I was using the we in this particular case to refer to Jewish readers of the Bible in this last statement that I made. And a very big generalization, because you can never make a generalization about all Jews.
Even about 2 Reformed Jews.
No, but really, don't you think we can make a generalization that the Jewish literary tradition shows all these people as faulty on purpose?
You can. But Ruth's question was about we. So, I'm sure there are many. I have met, and you probably, Jody, have also met Orthodox Jews, and I'm going to characterize them that way. Some Jews in the Orthodox opinion who have who have a very strong opinion about justifying all sorts of biblical heroes beyond what the biblical text says. They explain away the apparent problems with David, and he was actually following halacha when he did this.
Right, I agree.
Okay.
I agree, but It's true that they do that, but it's a very strong tradition that human beings are not perfect, that God is perfect.
And I would agree with that. Ruth's question was about we, and all I was saying, it's like a little footnote, is that the we here, when I use it to refer to how Jews look at these things, I would say it's nearly universal. And I would even discount the way that, as I said, some non-Orthodox Jews do this as well. But on the whole, Jews say, we read the Bible, we read biblical accounts, we read the accounts of all Jews, and we know that they're real people with good and bad qualities.
And I was in my 30s before my student rabbi said, you know, they're not real people, Claudia. I had taken them as real people. Kerry Olitsky, I don't know if you know Rabbi Kerry. He was our student rabbi 25 years ago in Louisiana.
What a career.
He also gave me my Hebrew name, Ayelet. But he's the one who said they're archetypes.
Well, there may have been real people behind some of them. This is beyond our discussion, except to the extent that you might want to look at Abraham, Isaac, Hagar, Ismail, and Sarah as archetypes in our movie, and see if they're being used in a useful way.
Yeah.
Seth, you mentioned that in one tradition, Ishmael had passed the test. Was that in being submissive toward God, or what was the test and how did he pass it?
Your question was, what does Islam say about Abraham, Isaac, and Ismail? At least I understood it at first. And the Quranic passage that talks about Abraham being asked to sacrifice his son whom he loves never mentions the name of the son, unlike the biblical text, which says, take your son, your only son, the one you love, Isaac.
Yeah.
That's
No, I got that. I'm asking a different question now. You said that I think it was in the Quran, Ismail as well as Abraham were said to pass a test, you know.
I actually don't remember whether they used the language of test or whether that is me looking at it from the point of view of how Jews construct. And again, Ruth's question may not have been about the universality of how Jews do these things, but in general, Jewish tradition, Jews look at the first line of what I think is chapter 22 in Genesis, and it says, and it happened to be after those things that God tested Abraham. That's how it's often translated. And the talk about the 10 tests that Abraham underwent and so on. So that language may have come from that. But what the Quran certainly says is that the son of Abraham, who was supposed to be sacrificed, explicitly says to his father, whatever God wants, I'm all for it. Whereas in the Jewish tradition, Abraham is asked by Isaac, where is the lamb for the slaughter? Abraham says, God will provide. And Midrashic sources say Isaac understood that what God was going to provide was him, Isaac, to be the sacrifice. But that's not explicit in the biblical text.
Well, with respect to the movie, it occurs to me that both of the boys, Isaac and Ishmael, both were tested in their own way. And I think they probably passed it in a much more modern sense in that they pursued their own interest and identity, contravening their father's hopes for them both.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That is the message of the movie. We are going to have to stop pretty soon. I'm happy to go a little bit past 9:30, but part of the idea is keep the time frame fine. At the end of the film, I get the impression that Isaac and Ishmael are reconciled, Sarah and Hagar are reconciled, and Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, and the conductor is not. Again, that's impressionistic on my part.
Interesting.
The boys are reconciled, the moms are reconciled, but as you said, the conductor character is sort of weak, even though the maestro is the absolute ruler of the orchestra. This maestro, and he is musically in certain ways, but this maestro is not the absolute ruler of his family. And when he tries to be, he gets frustrated. The kid does not, the kids don't really follow exactly what he play. The kid plays his father's piece, but he plays the father's piece in an Arab nightclub, not in the Jewish competition.
He wasn't even in the last scene, was he? The dad.
No, he's not. Okay, I have one or two more things to say before we call it quits for this evening. First of all, one of the things I like talking about when I show films is the sense of place that we get. Does anybody recognize any of the locations in this film?
No, but that triangular staircase has to be something somewhere.
I love that imagery, yes.
Carol, are you still with us? Did you recognize any of the locations? Carol was not with me the day that I took my students up to the top of the Yimka Tower. But there is a Yimka at the YMCA Tower, and there is a Carillon there, and the Carillon room doesn't look exactly like the Carillon room, but it really does exist. The Jerusalem Theater really does exist, and it has this bright red carpet. I don't know whether it has that staircase exactly. I don't think it has a luxurious apartment in the roof of the Jerusalem Theater, but you do have a sense of Jerusalem Theater. You have a couple of scenes that could have been almost any commercial street in Jerusalem, although not necessarily identifiable. But there is a real sense of place that this is Jerusalem. And, when the Hagar character is on the bus, you said, I've been on a bus like that, and when they're walking on the streets, you said it really does feel like a real place. So I think it's important to do that. The orchestra was the Ra'anana Orchestra, got the credits at the end. And many of the musicians were the real musicians of the orchestra. Okay, based on our discussion before, I think we'll do incitement for next week. How's that sound? Are we ready for that? Rabin's assassination, you're up to that?
And can you tell us again where to find it? Can you send us like
I'm going to send you.
You usually do.
Film.
You said it's Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Content is on Amazon Prime Video. It will cost you $4 and tax.
Okay.
I will try to see, Frank, if you're still with us, if you can find something that's less than $4, let me know. But I'll send this link for the incitement. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to leave now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And there it is if somebody wants to copy it from the chat. So we'll do incitement for next week. Okay. Frank, do you have anything more to say? You've been pretty quiet, unusually quiet.
No, nothing really to add. I mean, I've always got questions, but I can save it for next week.
Okay, good. Frank, if you can, I think you mentioned that there are more than one link for Autonomio. The only thing that I could find was Amazon Prime with a subscription service. Is going to cost me $5 a month if I'm not careful about canceling it.
Do you want me to send you DVDs?
You can send me the DVD if you want. If you can load it in and transfer it to me, that's even better.
Okay, because I have MP4s with the subtitles and such.
Yeah, that's real good. That's the best.
Okay, I can do that.
If you can send me the MP4s, that's best. Or if they're really too large, we'll work on a way to transfer a large file.
Okay.
Okay? Anybody else have any final comments you want to make?
So long.
Linda, you were pretty
Thank you.
Joy?
Pardon?
Yep.
Ruth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Say something. I'm sorry we missed him. Okay, anybody else have any final comments? Okay, good night, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Bye, Tov.